Okay. All right. So we are here. I'm so excited for the August guest speaker series. Everybody knows I get all very enthusiastic because I think that it's nice to bring in fresh faces that are not our familiar surrounding hangout folks, and even more so when we get to hear from the partner perspective, and even more so when someone's written about it because there's something tangible. Great gifts. I'm always thinking about that, like the subtleness of here, I got you a book, honey, I love you, and
but it'll help you. Yeah.
So I actually got to hear Ryan speak previously. I have gotten the honor of knowing his wife over the last couple of years through the wonderful, sarcastically, infertility community, but also a great thing because connections are a beautiful thing. And, we bring lots of support to each other. And oftentimes the part for this journey that gets kind of dismissed is the partner impact of this experience. And, we've talked throughout our hangouts over the last few years, about how, my partner says this, my partner says that, but I'm the one that's going through it. And then, the caution, tread carefully, when it comes to if you are going through treatment, all the hormones and stuff like that, it's like, okay, am I wanted? Am I not wanted? And what do I say? What do I not say? And, how do I be a supportive partner without being too distant or too in your face kind of thing? And I think that it's important that we have conversations about and with and around the partner component, because while we do have a lot of people in the pineapples who are also single parents by choice, we do have a lot of folks that do have partners. And whether that is a same-sex or a hetero relationship, there's still a partner involvement. And the support and the dynamics, obviously, clearly, is varied by, individuals. And so I think getting a chance to hear the partner perspective from someone who's gone through it, going through it, and is now where they're at, can also provide some insight into how to maybe not necessarily be a better partner, but the empathy piece sometimes can get lost in translation, especially when we don't know what to say as supportive partners. And so I think the concept of your book it's been hitting, I don't want to say like wildfire because there's a lot of wildfires going on right now, but it is definitely, and you're on the West. So
I'm on the West Coast. Yeah.
So
sure.
I mean that in a sensitive way, but it is definitely taking off and gaining a lot of popularity because you're speaking to an audience that doesn't have a lot of voice within this community. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Smith. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. And what we're going to do is we're going to let Ryan share his story, talk a little bit, about his thing, and then and he'll talk about the book specifically, and then we'll open it up for discussion thereafter. So cool. Get away, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, you had some really great points there on the intro that, this is definitely from my perspective, from my relationship with my wife. Every relationship's different. Everyone's infertility experience is very different. So, this book was kind of put together from my perspective, and hopefully people in all different types of relationship setups can take something from it. So I guess I'll just begin by telling a little bit about my story with my wife, Katie, and kind of how we got to where we are and where the book came in and all of this. So, my wife and I experienced infertility for about 4 to 5 years. We started attempting to get pregnant when we were around the age of 30. My wife was ready before that. I wasn't. I was pushing back on it. I wish I hadn't, but we were pushing back for a little bit. And as the 30th birthdays hit, it was, time to start trying to have kids. So, with everyone that's growing up and just learning in high school, you think, and all my friends around me, it seemed like, getting pregnant is going to be easy. Having kids isn't going to be, we may take a few months to actually become pregnant, but it's not going to be a big issue. No one around me was experiencing infertility. And if they were quiet about it, like way too many people are. That negative stigma around it. It's amazing the amount of people that have come out through this process of this book, that from all aspects of my life, sending me messages from people I worked with, as a camp counselor with for one summer, and they're talking to me about it. It's crazy. So We went through it, we started with about 6 months of timed intercourse. That didn't work. I went and got tested before he went to an infertility clinic. I came back all fine, no issues with the sperm side of things. And that's kind of where the journey starts as the partner, as I was now put to the sidelines. There was no problem with me as the male in the relationship. There was nothing really that I had to do. This was pre-COVID, which is a very different time as well, because Katie, my wife, had her work separate from my work. We kind of lived in the separate lives during the week. And we started at the infertility clinic, and she started going to appointments during the week. She would be going to her appointments over lunch, 2 to 3 appointments a week, doing the normal testing, whatever it may be. And again, I'm kind of on the sidelines as she's going through this. So there really was a disconnect. I was not a great partner when we first started. Looking back as I read through this, and I kind of thought about what I could have done better. And as I grew, I wasn't present in the beginning like I should have been. She was going through this. It was our problem, but she was the one handling it. She was the one contacting the fertility clinic constantly, talking to the doctors, going to the appointments during her lunch breaks. She was changing all things in her life. And I was kind of just going about thinking that everything's going to be okay. So we experienced infertility. We were starting at the infertility clinic. We started with IUIs, as so many people do. Kind of got the false hope that those would help us. And, unfortunately they didn't. Things were progressing. Throughout the book, I talk about kind of my feelings around this time. And at that point, we were still young. We got diagnosed with unexplained infertility, another pretty common diagnosis. And that's a weird one. It's a strange one to swallow. You're thinking, it gave me false hope, honestly. Unexplained infertility, there's nothing wrong. There's no obvious obstructions. There's nothing obviously wrong with her eggs. We're 30 years old. We're healthy. Everyone's so positive around us. It was, a guarantee in my head that this was going to work eventually. And we keep going through it, and it doesn't. Nothing's going according to plan. The timing's off. The IUIs don't work. And again, I'm kind of just going along with things at this point, just telling my wife, at any point this is going to work. I'm an even keel guy. I never get too high. I never get too low. It's, when this is going to happen, it's going to happen. If it doesn't work this month, don't worry, it will. And that wasn't always the right way to go about things. I needed to get down in the muck with her a little more, as I like to say. I wanted to be a fixer, and I don't have to always be a fixer. But I wanted to be at that point, and I was just always, we're healthy. There's nothing wrong. We're going to get there. This kind of changed as eventually we moved to IVF, and that's when the emotions and the physical aspect of things, the financial side of things, you really start to take an investment. The time that's put into it really changes, and that's when my mentality shifted a little bit. So we went to IVF, and we went through all of the normal protocols with it, and becoming an at-home nurse, which I talk about in the book, and just kind of being there for all the shots. It's amazing how, thinking back to those first shots, and how nervous you are for everything, and the buildup behind them. And now they're old hat, and how easy they actually are. But there's just such a buildup before, and that brings you together as a couple. It really is great. But we moved into that, and eventually, after going through everything and learning through so much through IVF, we did end up with 5 healthy embryos, which was wonderful. Setting expectations is important. At the time, we weren't so sure that was wonderful. I mean, you get 20 mature eggs, and then you lose some that don't get fertilized, and then the ones that do fertilize don't mature properly. The IVF attrition rate, it's something I talk about in the book. And setting expectations. And we were kind of disappointed when we ended up with 5 embryos, which is not how we should have been thinking, which again, I think is something important to touch on. But with those embryos, we did experience a loss with the first one. We had the first transfer. My wife experienced a miscarriage, unfortunately. We moved on, and then implanted 2 embryos the second time around, and neither implanted at all to start there. So that's when the talk of endometriosis came up, which was a cloud over our head throughout our infertility process. You hear about endometriosis. It drives me crazy that you can't diagnose endometriosis without a surgery to actually get in there and take a look. All of these wands and imaging and all the different tests that you women go through, and you can't tell if you have endometriosis. I can remember sitting in that doctor's office and being like, I don't understand. I really don't get that this is what we have to do. So we did end up going through the laparoscopy at that point. It showed moderate to severe endometriosis for my wife, which was then removed. Another 3 to 4 month waiting period, recovery time after that. Of course, you hear that biological clock ticking. We got to our last 2 embryos that we had left. We had planned on only implanting 1 embryo. We wanted to save that last one just in case there was a mix-up at the fertility clinic, and 2 ended up being unfrozen at the hospital instead of 1 as we intended. Those last 2 were put in, which was shocking to go from to all of a sudden have no embryos left from our first cycle of IVF. Unfortunately, we experienced another miscarriage, and that's kind of where the book came into play there. So this was last July 4th of 2021. We had gone through our first full cycle of IVF that wasn't successful, and it was kind of shocking. Again, we expected to have another embryo that left, and that was gone. And you're left thinking back, and anyone that's experienced a failed IVF cycle that didn't result in parenthood, you can't believe you have to go back to the beginning. You can't believe that you have to go back to the medicine and all the shots again and the schedules and going and picking up things and the blood tests and the wands and all the stuff. So I was in a pretty dark place, honestly, after that. And I was like, I was more angry than anything. So I searched out resources at that point. I was looking for some books or just something I could connect with. And for women, there was a bunch of books about biological clocks and egg health, all kinds of scientific stuff, nutrition, whatever it may be. And then there was books about loss and moving forward and dealing with the emotions of it all. And for guys, there were some books mainly about male infertility and the actual scientific part of things and sperm, but nothing about the journey or the emotional toll that it takes or what to expect, nothing really to connect with as someone that wasn't experiencing male factor infertility, but was part of the partnership that was ongoing. So I like to say that when we first started trying to get pregnant, my wife bought all the, rad dad books and dude, you're going to be a great dad. And I was like, why is there nothing like this talking about this? There's so many people that experience this and we're not talking about it. So that's where the book came into play. Finally, an Infertility Book for Dudes. It was July 4th in 2021. I was down as can be about everything. And my wife said, why don't you write a book about this? And I was like, okay, like we've said this before about a million different things, but let me write an outline. And I kind of just ran with it. So the book touches on everything from speaking about infertility and just our thoughts about it, that negative stigma I talked about earlier, and kind of our thoughts behind infertility, and then through our whole process from before trying to get pregnant, when we were trying to start a family, all the way through our 4.5 years of infertility. I share, our story. I share laid back stories and some of the crazy positions that infertility puts you in, sperm collection room, the waiting rooms, and how they drive me crazy that people don't talk in waiting rooms about infertility, and all the manicure that burns. I talk about some of the scientific side of things. I talk about spermagenitosis, which was a crazy word I learned, and all the different scientific part of things. But then, also, again, these stories of just kind of some lighthearted moments. The first time delivering a progesterone oil shot, which was not successful, and all the different things that go along with it. So it really depends on where someone is in their journey, what they get from it. Again, so many of us experience so many different things. But if it's, a guy that's just starting his journey, I've had a couple people say, hey, we're literally just starting and I picked up your book. Hopefully they can learn some tips and tricks about everything. They can learn about the actual steps they may have to go through, the science behind it all, what they can do to help with their sperm, how they can support their partner, whatever it is. And then there's guys that have been through way worse than I've ever gone through, experienced way more hardship. And, for them, it's hopefully something they can connect with. Just something you find relatable. It's amazing. I put up one Instagram story before this about one little thing about infertility, and people are like, dude, same thing. I can't believe it. And they come out of the woodwork. So for those people, it's just hopefully they can, laugh at some similar stories or some lighthearted moments that I've experienced as well. So I also have, I think it's important to mention that, my wife is a wealth of knowledge. She's been experiencing this as well for 4 to 5 years. So I include her perspective, I like to call it, at the end of each chapter in the book. She actually, through each chapter, she gives a little bit of a review. She gives some feedback on what the past chapter spoke about. So I felt it strange for me to talk about menopause burning. I don't know the sensation. I don't know what it feels like laying there or whatever it may be, or the emotions of me coming to her. So I have her here, and, guys probably want to hear what she's going through, what she thinks of this. So at the end of each chapter, she gives kind of her feedback and a quick little bullet points about what she thought about what I said that chapter, and her feedback on it all. So I think that's a great addition to it. There's some tips and tricks at the end of the books. And again, it's an easy read. It's a couple hundred pages, and hopefully you guys can just connect with it and really get something from it, and just, get the help and support they need. And if this helps them, then that's great. So Luckily for us, our journey continued. I ended the book after that first round of IVF, and we've continued. And I end the book kind of thinking about, what if the next cycle doesn't work? Would we be financially willing to do this again? Adoption and surrogacy, all things that I'm not an expert on, and I know, I've helped so many people. But luckily we did our second round of IVF, and my wife is pregnant now. So cautiously optimistic, as everyone in the infertility world is, but that hopefully we'll be parents this fall. So yeah, again, the book is out. It's been out for about a month. I got it sitting here, and if you know somebody or another guy or a partner, again, any relationship set up that thinks they can benefit from it, hopefully you can pick it up and follow me on Instagram, and we can connect.
Yeah, Ryan, that's like awesome. And I feel like I got so much more out of you talking this time than the last time I heard you speak.
Good.
So this was like really, really good. And I think, you hit on so many of the valuable assets to a pair of people going through this, and the how naive you were to think that this could just be like a simple thing and then it would happen. And and that's so common to hear from partners. I mean, even my friends who have gone through it, and I've talked with their spouses, and they're like, yeah, I didn't think we would still be here, like however long later.
Yeah, you don't want to scare people, but it's just naive is such a great word about so many different parts of it. Again, the expectations of it all, and just being realistic, like getting a call from the clinic that, you had 10 embryos and only, 6 made it to day 5, whatever it was, is actually really good news. But it's really strange to think that those embryos that could be your child, there's 4 less. So being prepared to process that, we would get that call and we would be devastated. And it's like, well, actually, with the IVF attrition rate, that's actually pretty good. And just being naive about the time management of it all, and how much you actually have to prepare for it, and just being there for your partner. It's all stuff that you don't really know until you go through it. So that's all really important. And communication, there's just so many different things that hopefully people can pick up from it.
Yeah, and I think that, it takes a lot for people to verbalize that they have no clue what their partner is going through.
Yep.
Communication is probably one of the most critical parts of going through infertility. And when you don't have clear communication, you definitely have a breakdown in what the relationship looks like. And that puts an even further strain on it. I know from my personal perspective, my husband, was definitely trying to do his best, but like he was trying to have this facade of, okay, just like you, like, we're just gonna ride it. We're gonna stick right in the middle, and it's all gonna be okay. And then I remember being like, dude, I really need to know what you're thinking right now, because right now I feel like I'm the only one on this train with no other passengers. And I need to know that, I have a co-captain who's riding this with me. Like, even though I'm in this field and I know a lot of this stuff, I still want you to do your own research and kind of look into the things and be able to ask questions when I ask questions and things of that nature, because then it's like I'm doing all the work. Like, my body is already working really hard, but I also have to like mentally strain more to do all this other, all this extra stuff. And once we like had that conversation, I was like, all right, cool, I'm on it. Let's go.
It's communicate. I mean, it just seems so basic when you hear like communication is key. It's like, yeah, I know communication is key, but I give like a couple examples in the book of just going through it for a year, and even our chemistry as partners, and just sexually, just being on the same page of like, look, we're having to do this timed intercourse every month, and this is just not working like it used to, and figuring that out. And I mean, you hear too often about relationships that burn out from this. So communicating about that and having a, what may be an awkward conversation, and being straightforward about it, be like, look, this is what I need to have this to be, the best situation for me and for you. And then moving forward. And then, great examples of communication with what you need at the doctor's office. And my wife's told me that, she needs me to advocate for her more, which is something I talk about, like speaking up for her, her in situations where she feels that the doctor isn't hearing it from her, because she might be saying this, they hear it from the female all the time potentially, and then stepping up as the partner and saying, well, this is what I think we need to do, and kind of putting your foot down to help there is big time. And then communication, another thing that was huge was with our friends and family. Like, who are we going to tell about this? My wife is super private about things. I'm an open book, literally, about everything. I have no problem talking about all this stuff. It felt more personal to her. So there was times where we would like go to a happy hour or something like that, and I would mention it to somebody, and she would come back so mad at me that at happy hour I was making conversation about whatever this may be, about the specimen collection I just had to give her, something like that. And just being on the same page with that, I was like, well, I have to respect that this is involving both of us, and we need a game plan of what family and friends we tell about this stuff and everything like that. And after those conversations, it's amazing how much closer you feel to your partner, and then you feel like you can actually attack it as a team, because without it, you're kind of both doing your own thing, and then all of a sudden, those two things can butt heads.
Yeah, it's the initial, it's just like breaking the boundary of like the awkward conversation that needs to
You have to.
happen.
I
And
know.
like, I don't know how to talk to you about it, but I kind of need to talk to you about it. And
you can't have that conversation with your partner. Who can you have it with? So
right.
It is weird, though. It is weird. We had, I'll never forget the conversation we had about it all. It was like, look, jumping in bed and just jumping under the covers and being like, come on, it's 6 o'clock and like, it's time. Just, it wasn't working for, for us, not to go into too much detail, but
Yeah.
it's important. It's important. It's your relationship, and it's making sure that your partner feels supported, and communication, again, just seems so easy. It's like, yeah, you just talk to each other, but it's just so much deeper than that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that's such a huge part of being a good support system. And that's clearly like all the things that you're really hitting on. Does Gary have any questions? Gary, do you have anything you want to ask or say, or thoughts or anything?
Not particularly. A lot of the things that Ryan's saying does resonate. I'll be completely honest. I am more aligned with Ryan's wife's side than his side in terms of being the more kind of internal, private individual. So to be in a group of exactly one additional dude is kind of like a little on the awkward side for me.
No problem. That's okay.
Yeah, I feel like everybody has to, that's part of when you talk about it with your partner, like, this is something that I want to talk about. And then these are the things that I'm okay with you talking about if you're going to be like out in the open on it. But these are the other things that I kind of think we should keep a little bit more intimately between the two of us versus like online. And I think then that's part of having that's a conversation, for sure, to have amongst you and your significant other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I had a question. I thought it was a good question. Now I don't remember. Isn't that how it always works? Out of everything that you went through, Ryan, what is the biggest takeaway that you have had? If you had to pick one thing that you've learned over these last 4 to 5 years.
Oh man.
One thing, the biggest thing as a partner that you were like, yeah, this is a lesson that I'm never going to forget.
So one lesson I'll never forget is how hard it is to get pregnant. That's one lesson that I definitely learned over the past few years. But as far as being a partner, something that we haven't touched on yet. I mean, I guess is just being present in this as a partner. Again, that's on the sideline, is being present. And how do you do that? Again, when your partner's the one going to all these meetings and everything, of course you try and go to every appointment that you can, but it's also little things. Like, just, it's amazing how much the little things can mean so much. So that's, if I'm not going to an appointment, just sending a text right before she gets there saying, hey, thinking of you right now, let me know what's going on. Just little things like that. Calling the doctor's office for her to set up one meeting that needs change, one appointment when she wasn't feeling good, advocating for her, being present and in it as best I can, which doesn't take that much time. If I'm on a business trip, and again, I'm just checking in with a text message, so be it. One of the best things I did was I was on a business trip once and it was cut short and I could have stayed, and I ended up, changing my flight to come home early to do the progesterone oil shot that night. And she was she was gonna drive to her friend's house, who's a nurse, who's half an hour away, and do it there and do the whole thing. And it was gonna be awkward and pack it up. And it was like, you know what, this is like an opportunity where I could have stayed on my business trip and I could have expensed a dinner that night and had a great night. But I was like, you know what, let me change my flight. The last meeting of the day is canceled and let me get home and, you know, connect with her. So just being present, I think, is kind of the biggest thing that, you know, as again, we're not going to experience the physical pain. We can't take away the pain. Sometimes emotionally, there isn't a lot you can do, but just be there. So all part of that kind of all wraps into just being present and thinking of things to help the best you can, and being aware of, you know, holidays that might be triggering, things that may be triggering, again, these conversations you're having, to really just show that you're in it with them, even though you can't be in it physically.
Yeah. You kind of nailed what I was gonna segue into, so that was like perfect. Yeah,
okay.
and but it's about, but you touched on the empathy piece. You
Yeah.
know, trying to have a little insight as to what she might be experiencing, and if I do these subtle little things, how much more, how impactful that will be in the moment, especially when it is really hard, like right then and there. And I think what I hear so often from partners is like, this is something that like I can't fix. Like I can't just put ice on it and then call it a day. Like, yes, ice will help, but it's not going to resolve the issue of, you know, not having a child and, you know, being pregnant. And I think that is a part for partners when they often retreat away from having these conversations, and the uncertainty of what to do to support their loved one going through it. So it's the avoidance kicks in, and then it's like, well, if I can't fix it, like what is there for me to really, how do I fit into this besides just doing my business in the cup and leaving
Strange.
it?
Yeah. If, you know, if my wife has a headache, I go and get Advil. If she, you know, has a cold, I'm running to the store to pick up this, and that solves it. If she sprains her ankle, I'm wrapping it and icing it. But with, you know, infertility, often there's not an answer that you know. So it is a weird spot. And again, sometimes you have to be there to help to fix it. Sometimes you need to do a little research and present that to be present, and again, advocate. And sometimes you need to suggest taking a step away and, you know, let's get away for this weekend. Let's take a month off. Sometimes you have to step in, and there's times my wife was, you know, going through it 3 months in a row, disappointment after disappointment. It's like, you know what, maybe the best thing for us is to take a month off of this. Why don't you stop for a month and go back to your normal life for a month? And just being there for those little suggestions. And then other times, again, it's just getting in the muck and just being there. And, you know, she knows it's going to be okay, but she doesn't need to hear me say that again. Like, oh, we're going to figure it out. I don't have to say that. I can literally just sit there and be sad if we need to be. So
Yeah, and I think that not everybody knows that that's okay.
Yep.
So you definitely, you know, validated that. And I think that, you know, as partners, like you guys think you're the tough guys, and like, you know, if I keep an optimistic viewpoint, like we're just gonna cruise right through. And from my perspective, that's one of the most annoying things. I could hear my husband, bless his heart, and I say that very nicely, but like I was like, okay, this is not really like helpful, like right now.
That was me for a couple of years. Again, in the beginning, that was me for the longest time. But I kind of had that false hope that, you know, and everyone around us, you know, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And it's like, it's been 3 years. It hasn't happened. Okay, people. So again, once we hit that IVF change, and it was kind of just like, oof, this has knocked me down. So I wish I kind of had gotten off that earlier and been a better partner early on.
But you were a good part. From what I hear, you were still a fabulous partner.
Well, that's good to hear.
But you know, but it goes to the fact of like, we shoulda, coulda, woulda. But the thing is, like, well, wherever we're at now in the chaos of the storm, how do I pivot and make right now matter more? Because now I know, okay, maybe that wasn't the greatest thing to have done or said. And now I have some more insight as far as like, okay, I can get my shit together, and this is how I can kind of like be more supportive, as long as, you know, they're okay with it. Because sometimes people who, you know, the person who's going through the treatments and stuff don't want more of that. So again, it goes to that conversation of like, yes, I would appreciate your your insight and your support a little bit more, or I got this, thanks, I love you dearly, but keep on trucking kind of thing. So,
and that's a conversation to have before potential bad news or good news comes, to, you know, have when it's just a normal regular day, just being like, hey, you know, how can I support you better, instead of doing it in the moment. So yeah, I completely agree.
yeah, that's so good. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, we just let somebody else in.
You're good.
Okay. Trying to think, what else can I throw at you? I think that's good. Like what you shared as far as like the biggest lessons, you know, as a partner going through it. I still can't think of the one question I was going to ask. So my apologies. I'll probably like message later if it comes to me.
You're good. We touched on a lot of topics.
Yeah. And I think, but I think it's really great for folks to hear. And I'm so glad that Gary is on, you know, to hear your perspective. You know, everybody has such a journey. And I think that one of the things I will say that you kind of like did talk on, but it doesn't matter. Everybody always thinks that there's somebody who has it harder, but your story is just as important as anybody else's. Just putting that out there for you.
Yep.
So don't do that to yourself. But we all have something to learn from each other. And I think that that's what you're really providing partners the opportunity is to like, okay, well, I learned this, but maybe I could have also learned that and all of that.
And again, every guy's going to take something different from it, you know, again, depending where they are in their journey, there's no one size fits all. No one has the exact same plan going through all this or the same experience, like you're saying. So hopefully different people pick up different things. And again, even people that have, you know, experienced all this stuff and have gone through, you know, everything that we have, they still find something relatable, because I still find it pretty awesome when I share a story and guys like, dude, that same exact thing happened to me.
Yeah. So, and it's like the underworld club that nobody.
I know, it's great to connect and actually talk about it again with how many people go through it. You know, it's just amazing that if you're experiencing some kind of other illness or sickness, or if you have to miss work for something, or if there's something major going on in your life, you tell everybody about it. You tell all your friends about it. You drop in the group chat. Your work knows about it because you have to take a couple of days off, this, that, and the other. You know, I have friends that they didn't tell their family until they couldn't make it for Thanksgiving because of treatment, and they were going through it for like 8 months. And it's like, you didn't even talk to your family about it until you had to. It's just, it makes me sad, honestly. So, but again, you know, people have a different viewpoint on that, on what they do want to share and not share. So people that are open to it, I love to conversate with people about it. And again, hopefully they get something from my book about it.
Oh, I know they will. I wholeheartedly know that they will. And with that, I'm gonna be sending a book to Gary this week.
Cool. Send him a book.
Gary will have a book coming his way.
Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think that, you know, the more hands we get it in, the more less isolating the stigma around infertility from a partner perspective will be, because, you know, social media, Instagram, Facebook is definitely an abundantly filled ocean with a lot of the female voices of the partners. And so I think that, you know, the tides are slowly turning, but very slowly. And so this is going to make a huge wave with the pebble that you're throwing out there with this book. And I wish you all the best of success in getting that word out there.
Thank you. And yeah, anyone can follow me again on the Instagram page that you had shared. So that's kind of the best spot for all the updates and, you know, any conversation there. And again, if you ever want to have me on again or come back on the call, I'm always open, and feel free to share this recording with whoever may enjoy it.
I will. I'm going to go ahead and hit stop record now.
Cool.